It remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries in religious history, a biblical enigma that has puzzled scholars, theologians, and believers for centuries. Between the ages of 12 and 30, the life of Jesus Christ is cloaked in silence, with no definitive records, no stories passed down through the generations, and no details to fill in the gaps. This absence of information has left a void. The Gospels, our primary sources on the life of Jesus, provide detailed accounts of his birth, his teachings, and the events leading up to his crucifixion and resurrection. Yet they are curiously silent about nearly 2 decades of his life. This lack of information has led many to wonder, what happened during those missing years? What was Jesus doing? Where was he, and how did those years shape the man who would become the central figure of Christianity? Some suggest that Jesus traveled far from his homeland, journeying to distant lands in search of knowledge and enlightenment. One of the most popular theories is that Jesus traveled to India, where he studied with Eastern mystics, learning the wisdom of Hinduism and Buddhism, and absorbing teachings that would later resonate in his own messages of love, compassion, and inner peace. These stories often depict Jesus as a spiritual seeker, a young man drawn to the mystical traditions of the East, where he would have encountered teachings that paralleled his own emerging ideas. As Jesus grew older, he likely faced tensions within his own family. The Gospels mention that even during his ministry, his brothers did not believe in him. There are legends, particularly in Britain, that suggest Jesus might have traveled to the British Isles during his lost years, the period between his youth and the start of his ministry, which is not well documented in the Bible. According to this, if Jesus did travel to Britain, he could have encountered the Druids, the Celtic priestly class known for their knowledge of nature, astronomy, and spiritual practices. Both the Druids and the Essenes were groups that pursued esoteric knowledge, had a strong connection to nature, and held a belief in the immortality of the soul. This has led some to hypothesize that Jesus, who might have been associated with the Essenes, could have found common ground with the Druids if he had indeed met them. So, what do the legends say? They center around a little-known figure from the Bible, Joseph of Arimathea, the man who provided the tomb for Jesus after the crucifixion. Some say he was Jesus' uncle, a wealthy merchant dealing in tin who once brought his young nephew to Britain. He was a man of immense power, a wealthy merchant with a passport that granted him passage across the Roman Empire. Jesus wasn't merely a rabbi, he was a figure poised between the divine and the earthly, a potential king in the eyes of many. He wasn't content with the sluggish pace of politics, so he brought his message straight to the people, a bold move that ultimately led to his crucifixion. But who was he before all this? Some whisper of his lost years spent in Egypt, undergoing the Great Pyramid's initiation. Others speak of journeys to Tibet and India, seeking wisdom from distant lands. Jesus wasn't just a teacher, he could have been a traveler too, a relentless seeker of truth. The gap between Jesus' childhood and the beginning of his ministry at around age 30 is one of the most intriguing mysteries of the Bible. His lost years, though largely hidden from us, were likely a time of intense spiritual preparation and communion with God, laying the foundation for the work he would soon undertake. Jesus' family had ties to the Essenes, a Jewish sect known for their secret wisdom, including Pythagorean mathematics. The Essenes, who lived in places like Qumran, held specific interests in sacred geometry. And while the New Testament doesn't mention them directly, their influence is palpable, especially in the Essene quarter of Jerusalem, rumored to be the site of the Last Supper. This could have been a reason for Jesus visiting Britain. If Jesus was a Pythagorean Essene who sought to return to the source of this wisdom, perhaps that inspired him traveling to Britain to meet the Druids, the ancient keepers of this knowledge. The Druids and Essenes shared much, from astrology to cosmology, herbalism to prophecy. Their wisdom, marginalized by later Christian traditions, formed an international tradition linking diverse groups to the original Pythagorean community. Could Jesus have journeyed thousands of miles in pursuit of this esoteric knowledge? Trade routes certainly existed. Phoenicians traded with Cornwall long before Christ's time. The connections between the ancient Celts and the Eastern world are undeniable, with similar artifacts and structures like dolmens and standing stones found in both regions. And as Julius Caesar himself noted, ancient Britain was indeed a place frequented by travelers from afar. In 1887, a man named Nicholas Notovich, a Russian adventurer and journalist, embarked on an expedition that would lead him to one of the most remote and mysterious places on Earth, the Himalayas, specifically the Hemis Monastery in Ladakh, India. It was here, at an altitude of 14,000 feet, surrounded by towering peaks and thin air, that fate took a dramatic turn. Notovich had a fall, breaking his leg, which forced him to remain at the monastery for weeks. During his convalescence, the monks of Hemis confided in him, revealing an ancient manuscript that contained the story of Saint Isa, a name strikingly close to Jesus in many Eastern traditions. This manuscript, they claimed, documented the life of Jesus Christ, including his travels through India during the so-called lost years, the period between his childhood and the start of his ministry, which the Bible largely omits. The manuscript was no ordinary document. Written in Tibetan, but purportedly translated from even older texts in Pali, it was said to date back to just after the crucifixion. It told of Jesus' journey to the East, beginning at the age of 13, and his time studying with the sages of India in places like the ancient temple of Jagannath, a place already steeped in legend as a center of deep spiritual knowledge. The story gained further traction when another seeker, Swami Abhedananda, a respected scholar and disciple of the famous Indian sage Ramakrishna, made his own pilgrimage to the Hemis monastery. Unlike Notovich, Abhedananda was fluent in the local languages and was able to directly engage with the monks. He verified the existence of the manuscript and even mentioned it in his writings, lending further credibility to the astonishing claim that Jesus had indeed spent time in India. The mystery of the lost years reminds us that even in silence and hiddenness, profound preparation takes place. When the time was right, Jesus was ready, fully equipped for the mission that would change the world forever. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of our content. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments section. We love hearing from you, and here's a bonus for you. There's a free ebook waiting for you in the description below. Make sure to download it and enhance your knowledge. Can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, take care.